You first learned of them from a dead probe. The little explorer, Voyager 27, had gone dark decades ago. You wrote it off as a loss, another brave machine swallowed by the great dark. Then, a single packet of data arrived. It had traveled for 60 years across the void. It was not a report. It was a recording. The probe's final moments were not of a system failure. They were not of a meteor strike. Its sensors recorded a wave of energy, something unseen, something that did not register on any known spectrum. But the probe's humble audio sensors, they picked up something else. A sound, a song that had no right to exist in a vacuum. You listened to the recording in a soundproofed room. The data screamed a silent, cosmic horror. A melody of impossible complexity played. It was beautiful. Terribly, horribly beautiful. It made you want to weep for joy. It made you want to open the airlock and embrace the stars. Your rational mind fought against the tide of pure emotion. The probe's final diagnostic was a single, repeating error. All organic components liquefied. A shiver ran through Fleet Command. That probe had simple biological computers, gel-based processors designed to mimic a neuron. They had been utterly destroyed. What would that song do to a human mind? The question hung in the silence. It was a question you had to answer. You sent out new probes, stronger, faster, shielded. You sent them toward the source, toward what you began to call the Siren stars. Your ships pushed into the galaxy's silent quadrants. Every star system you explored was unnervingly quiet. You would arrive to find planets of breathtaking beauty, worlds that should have teemed with life. But they were all tombs, magnificent, silent tombs. The instruments registered breathable atmospheres. They found liquid water. They found the chemical building blocks of life itself. But they found no life. On a world you named Elysia, you found the ruins. Crystalline cities soared into a turquoise sky. Their graceful spires pulsed with a faint, dormant light. The architecture was sublime. It spoke of a species that loved art and reason. Yet, there were no bodies. There were no signs of war or famine or plague. There was only silence. The silence of a billion vanished souls. You walked the empty boulevards of these ghost worlds. You saw homes with meals still on the table. You saw playgrounds where toys lay scattered in the dust. It was as if everyone, all at once, had simply ceased to be. They had heard a call, a promise too wonderful to ignore, and they had answered it, leaving everything behind, a whole galaxy of ghosts. A museum of civilizations that had reached for paradise and found only oblivion. Your best analysts were put on the case. They looked away from the silent worlds. They looked toward the space between them. For years they sifted through the noise, the cosmic microwave background radiation, the faint echo of the universe's birth. They were looking for a ghost in the static, a signal buried beneath the noise of creation itself. They almost missed it. One analyst, a young woman named Ilara, noticed the anomaly. It was a pattern so subtle it was nearly undetectable. A slight, rhythmic fluctuation in the energy readings. It was not random. It was organized. She isolated the frequency. She filtered out the background chaos of the cosmos, and then she played it for the command council. It was the same sound the dead probe had recorded. There, woven into the very fabric of space-time, was the song. It was not coming from a single point. It was everywhere, a low, malevolent hum across the entire quadrant. It was a net, cast across tens of thousands of light years, waiting. The siren stars were not the source. They were the amplifiers. They were the speakers for a melody of absolute extinction. and humanity had just stumbled right into the concert hall. The work to decipher the siren song began. You couldn't risk playing the raw audio. The first attempt, even filtered, caused 3 researchers to fall into a catatonic state. They smiled peacefully as their minds unraveled. You had to find another way. You used quantum computers to model the song's effects. You translated the melody into pure mathematics. The numbers on the screen were more terrifying than any sound. The song was a weapon of psychic dominance. It resonated with the very structure of a conscious mind. The melody was tuned to the frequencies of hope, of love, of ambition. It promised everything you ever wanted. It showed you visions of a personal heaven, a perfect, tailored paradise. All you had to do was let go, surrender to the music. But it was a lie, a beautiful, deadly lie. The song promised paradise while delivering absolute oblivion. The harmonic structure was a key that unlocked the mind and then dismantled it. It didn't just kill. It erased. It consumed the psychic energy, the soul, the very essence of a being, feeding the unseen singers, making their terrible song even stronger. It was a cycle of galactic predation. And you were next on the menu, humanity's best minds gathered on a shielded moon. The project was given a code name, Nightingale's Dawn. It was a desperate, almost insane idea. You could not block the song. Its psychic energy passed through any shield you could devise. You could not outrun the song. It was already waiting for you in every system ahead. You could not fight the song with weapons. How do you shoot a melody? So you came to a conclusion so audacious it was almost laughable. If you could not block it, or flee it, or fight it, you had to answer it. You would answer their song of oblivion with one of your own. You would pit the voice of humanity against the hunger of the void. You would meet their perfect, sterile harmony with your messy, chaotic, beautiful noise. It was the most human plan ever conceived. It was probably going to fail. But you had to try. The shipyards of Mars and Triton fell silent of all other work. Every resource was poured into a new kind of fleet. You built vast ships, not for war, but for music. Their hulls were not layered with armor plating. They were covered in resonant alloys and massive broadcast arrays. Their cores were not weapon forges. They were power plants of immense scale, built to drive the most powerful speakers ever created. They were your choir ships. These vessels were cathedrals of science and art. Their central chambers were vast auditoriums. Their purpose was to carry humanity's voice into the deep dark. Each ship had a crew of thousands, not soldiers, but engineers, technicians, and conductors. They were the orchestra. The ship itself was the instrument. They would sail into the heart of the siren's web. They would turn up the volume, and they would sing a song the galaxy would never forget. A new collaboration began, one that fused disciplines once thought separate. Your greatest artists and scientists worked together. Composers sat with astrophysicists. Poets argued with quantum engineers. They were tasked with creating the ultimate counter-melody, a song that could stand against the siren's call, a song that could save not just your bodies, but your minds. They wove a tapestry of sound. It was built on the foundations of human experience. They sampled the sound of a baby's first laugh, the roar of a waterfall, the quiet rhythm of a sleeping city. They encoded the sorrow of loss, the pain of every war, every farewell. They captured the fierce joy of discovery, the courage of standing against the dark. It was a song of hope, sorrow, and defiance. The melody was complex. It contained discordant notes. It had unresolved chords. It was imperfect. It was chaotic. It was everything the siren song was not. Their song was a perfect, sterile promise of peace. Yours was a messy, vibrant, living scream of existence. Your song did not offer paradise. It offered struggle. It offered truth. It offered a chance to keep fighting. That was the only promise humanity could honestly make. The fleet of 100 choir ships arrived. They warped into the system of the first siren star. It hung in the blackness before you, a shimmering sapphire, breathtaking and deadly. It pulsed with a soft, inviting light. Even through the ship's shielded viewports, you could feel its pull, a gentle whisper in the back of your mind, a promise of rest after a long journey. The bridge of your flagship, the Nightingale, was silent. The fleet conductor, a man named Kenji, stood on his podium. His face was projected on the main view screen. He looked out at the sapphire star. He looked at the faces of his crew. He raised his baton. "Begin the first chorus," he said. His voice was steady, and across 100 ships, a new song entered the void. Your ships began to sing their counterpoint, a rising crescendo of horns, a defiant drumbeat, a human voice multiplied 1,000,000,000 times, singing of home. The stars seemed to reel. The gentle, psychic whisper became a roar of outrage. The siren's fury was unleashed. Its song intensified, lashing out at your fleet. It was no longer a subtle temptation. It was a psychic battering ram. The serene melody of paradise twisted into a shriek of pure hatred. It slammed against your ship's psychic dampeners. Red lights flashed on consoles across the bridge. Hull plates groaned under the psychic pressure. The very air seemed to vibrate with malice. You felt it in your teeth, a high-pitched whine that threatened to crack your skull. Men and women gripped their stations. Their faces were pale with strain. The siren song probed for weaknesses. It whispered tailored lies into every mind. It showed you your deepest fears. It promised to end your pain if you would just stop singing. On the choir ship Orpheus, a young technician screamed. He saw visions of his family dying in flames. His conductor locked eyes with him. She adjusted the ship's harmony. She focused a single, gentle, melodic line toward him, a lullaby his own mother used to sing. The technician's eyes cleared. He took a shaky breath and returned to his console. Your song was not just a weapon. It was a shield. It was a comfort. It was the anchor that held you to sanity. Your song was strong, but the siren was ancient and powerful. You were holding your own, but you were not winning. The sapphire star burned with cold fire. Its psychic assault was relentless. You needed something more. Some note it could not comprehend, some harmony it could not counter. The conductor, Kenji, looked at the data streaming from the silent worlds you had passed. The ghosts. He saw their silent cities, their empty cradles, and he had an idea. He gave the order. Access the archives. Project Echoes of the Lost. The scientists and artists had planned for this. They had gathered the cultural data from the ruined worlds, the art of the crystalline city builders, the star charts of a race of gentle insectoids, the mathematics of a species that lived in gas giants. You had no recordings of their voices, but you had their works, their dreams, their legacy. Your song changed. You wove their patterns into your own music. You translated their architecture into chords, their mathematics into rhythm, their art into melody. Suddenly, your song was not just the voice of humanity. It carried the memories of the fallen races. Their silenced voices joined yours. A chorus of 1,000,000,000,000 ghosts singing in defiance of the thing that had consumed them. a symphony of remembrance. The siren star pulsed erratically. For the first time, its perfect, flawless harmony faltered. The addition of the alien echoes introduced something new. A note of grief, of memory, of shared loss. It was a concept the siren song could not process. Its melody was built on pure, selfish consumption. The idea of singing for those who were gone, it was a dissonant chord in its perfect weapon. A crack appeared in its harmony. The song of the sapphire star wavered. It stumbled. The psychic pressure on your fleet lessened for a precious moment. On the bridge of the Nightingale, a cheer went up. Conductor Kenji did not smile. He raised his baton higher. "Now," he commanded, "all power to the final movement, the crescendo." This was your chance. The moment to break the siren or be broken yourselves. You pushed your choir ships to their absolute limits. Reactors glowed cherry red. The resonant hulls vibrated so intensely they threatened to tear themselves apart. The human anthem swelled into a wave of pure creation. You poured everything you had into that final note. Every hope, every dream, the memory of every fallen civilization, the stubborn, unbreakable will to exist. The song was no longer just sound. It became a force of nature, a tidal wave of psychic energy that was not destructive, but creative. It did not seek to unmake. It sought to build, to affirm, to declare across all of time and space that life was precious, that memory mattered, that you would not go silently into the void. Your voices, and the voices of the ghosts you carried, rose as one. The siren's psychic shell could not withstand the blow. The pure, ego-driven malevolence of its song could not comprehend the selfless power of your anthem. The sapphire star's perfect melody, a weapon honed for eons, shattered. The crystalline structure of the psychic field around it fractured. First, a single hairline crack, then 1,000, then 1,000,000. Light and sound erupted as the ancient spell broke. There was no explosion, only a release. A wave of pure, untainted starlight washed over your fleet. The oppressive psychic weight vanished. The whispers in your mind fell silent. The shriek of the siren was gone. For a moment, there was a sound you had not heard since entering the system. Nothing. A profound, peaceful silence that was more beautiful than any music. The sapphire star still shone, but its cold, predatory light had been replaced. It now glowed with the warm, honest light of a normal star. The crew of the Nightingale looked at each other. Their faces were tear-streaked and exhausted. But they were smiling. They had faced the monster in the dark. They had looked into the abyss. And they had sung until the abyss blinked first. It was over. You had won. In the aftermath, you did not leave. You stayed. The siren song was gone from this star. But there were other stars, thousands of them, still broadcasting their deadly lullaby. Your work was not finished. You had broken one note in a galactic symphony of death. You became the guardians of the silent stars, a new role for humanity. Not conquerors, not explorers, but tenders of a fragile, wounded galaxy. Your choir ships took up permanent stations. They patrolled the haunted quadrants. They sang your song, not as a weapon, but as a shield. An anthem of life that protected nascent worlds. A melody of hope that drowned out any lingering, hateful echoes. You sang for the ghosts. You sang for the children who would now be born on worlds that would never know the siren's call. You had faced the silence of the void and filled it with your own voice. Humanity had become the galaxy's choir, and your song had only just begun.